What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are prepared for some sun talk. The Dallas Cowboys returning home this week, going to host the Washington Commanders at their home building of AT&T Stadium. And you probably have seen that the sun has become a conversation this week in a way that it normally isn't. The reason for that is this is the third home game of the season for the Cowboys. Their first home game of the year was against the New York Giants. That was a noon kickoff. During that particular window, the sun, the glare that it provides through those beautiful windows at AT&T Stadium isn't quite the same. The second home game was the infamous tie against Micah Parsons and the Green Bay Packers. That was a primetime game. Obviously, you're not dealing with that. This is the first home game of the season for the Cowboys in the afternoon window, which means that glare that we all know and love is going to be shining through about halftime, third quarter. It's going to piss us off, and it's probably going to affect something that's going to piss us off even more. But yeah, it feels appropriate that in my office right now, the sun is just kind of covering me in a beautiful way. And so I hope the sun is covering you in a beautiful way. Not one that is too intimidating or too much, but just enough to make you feel warm and toasty as the fall cooler weather starts to arrive. It is Friday, October the 17th, 2025. A happy early October 19th. If you know, you know. And we've got our Madden simulation up on the channel if you want to go check that out. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I do think you'll want to watch until the very end. It's been a busy week here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. We always try to bring you interesting, fun, different kinds of interviews. Obviously, relate everything we can to the Cowboys if they're a little bit off the wall. This week, ESPN's Laura Rutledge stopped by. That was a ton of fun. It was always great to talk, or it is always great to talk with a Florida Gator like Laura herself. And so I really enjoyed that. I had a great preview of this game with Jamal Forrest. That is up on the channel as well. Jamal is one of the best people to talk to when it comes to somebody who covers the opposing team. I always enjoy Washington weeks for that specific purpose. So lots of stuff for you to check out. Today, this episode is final thoughts ahead of a big game. This is kind of a must-win game for the Cowboys. It's silly to say that about any game in general because they're all must-wins. They're all preferred wins. But with the team sitting at 2-3-1 and this being a division rivalry, if the Cowboys were to drop this, it would put them in a pretty significant hole. Falling to 2-4-1 at mid-October is very difficult to recover from. In fact, where they're at is already difficult to recover from. There's no team in Dallas Cowboys franchise history who won only 2 games or fewer through their first 6 of a respective season that made the playoffs. So they're already trying to defy literally all of franchise history in that respect, and to put themselves further behind the 8 ball again at the hands of a division rival would be a pretty steep mountain to climb. And I don't think any of us want that to be the case. And so you can certainly argue that this is the biggest game of the season so far, and that's kind of a wild thing to be true on October 19th, but that's the hole the Cowboys have dug for themselves. And that it's against Dan Quinn, that it's the first game that Dak Prescott's going to be playing against Dan Quinn. Dak didn't play in either game last year. Quinn's first year leading the Commanders. In fact, this is the first time that Dak Prescott's going to be playing against a Dan Quinn team, Dan Quinn-led team, I should say, not being on the same team as Dak Prescott. This game is the first one that Dak Prescott is going to play against Dan Quinn since the infamous watermelon kick game in the early days of 2020, which this season feels very similar to. And so I think we're all very excited. It's going to be very interesting to see because it's not just Dan Quinn. It's Dan Quinn and Joe Witt and all the former Cowboys. Jamal mentioned Dorrance Armstrong, but Tyler Biadasz is over there, right? Like we've joked a lot about in the last year and a half, all the former Cowboys that Dan Quinn has collected over there. So you've got that going on. You've got the fact that on the Dallas side of things, they seem to be getting very healthy, seem to be getting all their players back that are available, right? You talk about someone like Cooper Beebe, who's not technically available, but CeeDee Lamb expected to play in this game. From an offensive line standpoint, they've been okay, but reinforcements arriving, Kevontae Turpin seemingly on track, right? Like these things are all massive, but they all still ultimately, I think, come with, I don't want to say a grain of salt, but with some tempered expectations, because I think when I say the sentence, CeeDee Lamb is probably going to play on Sunday, I think your reaction is, that's awesome. That's great. That makes me very happy. CD is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I can't believe I get to watch an offense that features him and George Pickens that Dak Prescott is the quarterback of. Again, these things make me very happy, but my happiness has a ceiling, a limitation, because of the defense, right? Like the offense, like, your natural response is that's great. So they're going to score 1,000,001 points now, because that's probably still not going to be enough if the defense continues to play the way that it has all season long. And that's ultimately what the challenge comes back to for this year's version of the Dallas Cowboys is, can your defense be good enough? Can you get, and this is a low bar here, 2 to 3 stops a game? Can you get 4 to 5 stops a game? Can you do enough for the offense to just have to be very good and not have to be perfect? And if you can manage that, then you stand a chance to win, a decent amount of football games, even against some stiff competition like this Washington Commanders team ultimately is. And that's, what we're going to learn here. We're going to learn on Sunday how seriously the Cowboys are taking this. I want to put a quote up on your screen that I don't know that I've ever been able to talk about a quote like this before. And I've been doing this professionally for about a decade now. And so I don't say that lightly, but I'm recording this on Friday morning, as I mentioned. And this is Jerry Jones's quote on Friday on 105.3 The Fan. Shout out to my guy, Joe Hoyt, for the tweet. Everybody should follow Joe at Joe J. Hoyt. So Joe tweeted out, interesting comment from Jerry Jones on 105.3 The Fan about having 3 defensive coordinators in 3 years. That's my fault. That really is. You knew you were going to have someone different the last 2 years. He added that defenses get better and better and more comfortable as games go on. Okay, why is this important? Why did I find this to be so interesting? Why did I say this was something that I had never really put up on the screen in 10 years? Jerry Jones said, this is my fault. And that's like a rare thing. It's one thing to say like, oh, it all starts and ends with me. But to say that's my fault, I quoted Joe's tweet and I said, that the Cowboys, and I stand by this, so I'm obviously telling it to you, the Cowboys are still, even today, on October 17th, on October 19th, when this game takes place, the Cowboys are still today feeling the ramifications of screwing around after the 2023 season. We've talked about this many, many, many times, and I'm not here to relitigate the events of the last, whatever it's been, 18, 19 months, okay, 20 months, whatever. But we have said, I know I have said, so I'm only going to speak for myself, and I don't say this in a I was right way, but the Cowboys had to make a decision on Mike McCarthy following that Packers playoff loss. I understand that one of the things I'm about to say is going to, you're going to find it to be ridiculous, but they either had to give McCarthy an extension because he was set to enter the final year of his deal, as we all now painfully know, or they had to fire him, right? And my point was, you could have made an argument towards an extension at that point in time, even after that playoff loss. I promise we're not going to spend a lot of time here, because you could have said they've been to the playoffs at that time. Each of the last 3 years, they've been this great offense. Mike McCarthy had a lot of success as the offensive play caller, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, if you'd given him the extension, even against what you or someone else may have wanted or thought was best, if it hadn't worked out, you could have just fired him at some point in the future. And you could have fired him, and it would have been just money that you're throwing away. And we talk a lot about how you're the most valuable professional sports franchise in the world, and you should weaponize that when you can. That was an opportunity where you could have legitimately weaponized it. You could have said, we're going to give Mike McCarthy this extension. Again, this would have been in the early calendar days of 2024. We're going to give him this extension right now. We're going to get rid of all the drama. If it works out, obviously that's preferred. If it doesn't work out, we'll just fire him. But we're going to give him this extension right now so that we don't have these questions hanging over us for an entire year, which is what they decided to do, right? By not doing anything with Mike McCarthy, because it would have been better to fire him with a year remaining on his deal, to be very clear here. It would have been better because you could have gotten rid of all that drama in a different direction, right? But by not doing that, by not extending him or firing him, you left the questions. You let everything linger. You let everything sit. It's kind of like, when you should wash a dish, but you're like, I'm just going to let it soak. Like, they just let everything soak for a year. It was horrible. And this quote about defensive coordinators that Jerry Jones had, we all knew. We all said, the whole world said, we're not geniuses. I'm not a genius. Like, no one is brilliant for recognizing that it was a tenuous situation to have everybody be in a lame duck season. With Dan Quinn leaving, we've obviously been talking about Dan Quinn here relative to this game, and so it's ironic that Jerry would offer this quote now. But Dan Quinn leaving to get the head coach in Washington, or to get the head coach job in Washington, goodness gracious. And then bringing in Mike Zimmer, who turned out to be better than at least I expected throughout 2024. We all knew that it wasn't going to work out. We all knew that Mike McCarthy wasn't going to return in 2025, and that was going to set up this situation. So I've talked before about how Matt Eberflus deserves some grace because of the Micah Parsons trade. I think we're all, fair enough to say that. You can also argue that he deserves some grace and that these defensive players are dealing with their third defensive coordinator in as many years. And you could argue that the players deserve that grace. And I can appreciate and respect Jerry Jones for taking some ownership and some accountability for this. We've seen the Cowboys make some decisions that are emotional and illogical a lot, I would say recently, but over all of time, basically in the Jerry Jones era. Trading away Micah Parsons is one of them, and not doing anything with Mike McCarthy and multiple stops is another. They should have made a decision on Mike McCarthy at the end of the 23 year, a firm decision in extending him or firing him. And they should have made a decision on Mike McCarthy as soon as last season ended and not let everything float in the wind for a week the way that they did. But by being dramatic, by being silly, by playing stupid games, they've won some stupid prizes. And these are the results. These are the stupid prizes that you've won. And so I'm not going to sit here and take the tiny part of Jerry's quote that says defenses get better and more comfortable with each other as seasons go along. But I will say that I think that provides some hope, some cope, if you will, that maybe this defense, as bad as it is, and it is literally one of the worst in franchise history through the first 6 games of a season, that maybe they will get better. Maybe they will stabilize as the season goes along. Maybe they will get more comfortable with one another. Maybe they will start to adapt and to adjust and to kind of figure things out, not in a way that turns out to be one of the best defensive efforts that we've ever seen in a season in franchise history, but in a way that is simply not the worst. And that even happened with the 2020 season, right? Like, you look back at the 2020 Cowboys, as awful as that year was, the defense was horrible and horrendous, but they did start to kind of figure things out just a little bit in a, get an average passing grade down the stretch, which was impressive because they were dealing with a backup quarterback at that time in Andy Dalton. And so that's my hope. And I kind of can appreciate that. I kind of can understand that. And I'm not saying that makes me against the idea of replacing Matt Eberflus in 2026, but that would be wild to have 4 defensive coordinators in as many years. Like, at some point you have to commit to some stability, which goes back to the point that we were talking about, how they had to make a decision on Mike McCarthy. But relative to this game, it is a must win, but it's also a should win, right? At this point, you're home, even though you're an underdog. And last week was a should win. Chicago was a should win. But it seems like, and I'll tell you, not in a spoiler way, but we ran our Madden simulation with Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel both playing the game for Washington. It seems like they may not, or at the very least, it seems like they may be limited, not in an injury designation way, but in a just literal way, not their full and total, healthy selves. And nobody roots for injuries or wishes injuries, but realizing that and acknowledging that hinders Washington. That makes Washington a much lesser team. That's their top 2 receivers, their top 2 receiving options, and they can certainly run the ball very well. Jane Daniels is very impressive and has a lot of talent, a lot of skill set, but that makes this a should win game, right? Like, you're talking about Washington is limited offensively in a serious way, right? Like, their overall offensive capacity is diminished, and here you're the best offense in the NFL, and you're getting even better. You're injecting CeeDee Lamb back into this mix. You're injecting Kevontae Turpin back into this mix. Your offensive line is getting better. There's no reason why you shouldn't win. And that conversation ultimately comes back to the defense. Can you stop a limited Washington outing? You should be able to. We all expect you to be able to. We all expected you to be able to stop Carolina and Chicago to some degrees more than you were able to in those respective games. But this is a game that you should win. And if you do, depending on how that happens, we may believe a little bit more again. I think we all know, well enough at this point not to give you our full level of trust at this point in time. But if you go out and you take care of business against Washington, and we've been saying this sentence for a few weeks now, we will give you some benefit of the doubt back. Because if you go take care of this game, you're suddenly back in this mix a little bit. Obviously, we'll see what happens with Philadelphia against Minnesota. I can't believe how badly we're rooting for Carson Wentz, maybe, although it might be JJ McCarthy. That's a them problem. But you go out, you take care of business against Washington. Denver is a weird team. Denver's an interesting house of horrors, which is applicable to the Halloween theme this time of year. That's kind of a weird spot, but who knows? You go, you beat them, and then you come back home for Monday Night Football, and you should beat the Arizona Cardinals. And all of a sudden, life is very chill for you at the bye week. And you come out and you face a Raiders team you should be, right? Like, it's not hard to move the goalposts slightly in a way that makes things work out. And it starts here. You win this game, and it is a massive gust of wind in your sails. And you obviously really need that right now. And so it should happen. Again, you've got the best offense in the NFL that's getting better now with players coming back from injury. You're taking on a team that is kind of trying to stop the bleeding because they're falling apart a little bit. And that regression to the mean that everyone thought was coming for them in 2025 is, and they're doing everything they can to push that from happening. You've got, their top 2 pass catching options. Zach Ertz still exists and whatnot, but their top 2 receivers, limited to some degree in this game. You should beat them. Go do the thing you should do. That's kind of what this ultimately comes down to. Forget the fact that Washington is dealing with injuries. Go stand tall. Go say, we're not going to stand for this. We lost last week. It was very embarrassing. We're going to prove to you all that we're not going to be that team anymore. We're going to find a way to find a way, right? Like, go find the way to find a way. Go do the thing you should do. Go impress us, right? Like, go prove us wrong. That's ultimately what this comes down to in a lot of ways for me. And that's kind of my final thought. I will be, before that, up next in your feed here on the channel, we'll have Dallas Cowboys in Espanol, which is a series that I have, a weekly video that I offer in Spanish for those of you who are interested. But after that, the next time you'll see me will be here live after the game for our post-game show that is also accessible in the Bleacher Report app. But you can obviously watch right here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, where I hope you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. Like the video. You can hang out with me on social media. I'm on X, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, rj.ochoa. rj.ochoa@sbnation.com is how you email me. LinkedIn, I got a Facebook page. It's popping off a lot as of late. The links to all these things are down in the description below if you want to check them out. But for now, my friends, I bid you adieu. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope that everything you eat is delicious. I hope you're able to watch some fantastic television or movies or whatever. My wife and I have like 10 things that are recorded that we're going to binge over the weekend. Some great college football games as well. Obviously, baseball. It's just the best time of year, and I hope that you're enjoying it with people who matter to you. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody, and we will see you next time.